Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So as you can see, I'm not in London. My wife and I came over to Switzerland to spend Christmas with the family here. Don't worry, Rudy is being well looked after. We thought of bringing him, but it's not very convenient to bring him. It's not a long flight, but it's a long trip in terms of waiting and taking trains and so forth. So I'm recording this on Saturday, December 23rd. So the day before Christmas Eve. And I have been following things a little bit. I saw that gold and silver did well yesterday. They did come off a little bit at the end of the day, but I still think they look good. So we're going to look today, later on, at a chart of gold, long-term chart of gold, weekly long-term chart of gold. That's pointing to, I think, positive developments for the price of gold. And of course negative for the dollar and all other fiat currencies, because that's what gold is. But what I wanted to talk about today in particular is the petrodollar and what the US has been doing for over, well, about a decade to punish countries that don't toe the American line, so to speak, with sanctions and other weapons, I guess, that they can use, seeing that they have the world's reserve currency, and not only the world's reserve currency, but the currency that's used for payments, which is another important thing. And I've been making videos for about 7 years about the fact that the petrodollar was on its way out, and I did say that it wasn't going to be overnight and that it would take a long time because it was like a super tanker changing tack. And it's interesting that it's taken about 7 years since the Chinese, for example, started creating exchanges, gold exchanges, commodities exchanges, and since they started loading up on gold as well, along with Russia. So yeah, I started talking about this in 2017, about the petrodollar, and I think as 2024 approaches, it looks like the Americans, unfortunately, the leadership, and it's not just the current administration but all the previous administrations, they've been shooting themselves in the foot. Having the exorbitant privilege, as I think it was Giscard d'Estaing said, can be good, but it can also be too much of a good thing. And I saw an article yesterday in the FT, so yeah, I have kept in touch with things, even though I'm on holiday. It's not hard, it's just reading what you usually like reading, you know, the news and stuff. So yeah, it says U.S. threatens sanctions on banks that help fund Russia's war machine. White House executive order targets lenders Moscow is using to source sensitive items. So am I defending Russia and China and countries that are challenging the petrodollar? No, I'm just observing and letting you know how it's going to affect your pocketbook. Just a little story. My sister, one of my sisters, her daughter lives in Florida, and she goes there every November. And we're talking about her trip, her last trip this year in November. And she said she drove through to get a Starbucks, and it was $8. And because we were talking about, you know, up here in the mountains, there's no Starbucks, and you can go to a cafe, and it's going to cost you maybe 5 francs, maybe a little more, to sit down for a coffee. But it's much nicer than driving through and getting something, you know, a cup, and drinking in your car. So that's how it's affecting Americans. the rising cost of living, and I think it's going to be quite a shock. And it's going to be a shock here as well in Europe, Switzerland, and the UK, but not as much because we haven't had it as good as the Americans. Everything they always got was very cheap. I mean, my sister as well said that it's not worth buying stuff in the States anymore, like clothes and other stuff. You can just buy it here and it's the same price. But in the past, it wasn't so. And I remember that as well, going to the US from the UK. So the demand for dollars is going to decrease. And we know that on January 1st as well, BRICS are going to expand into, I think, 10 countries. They're going to go from 5 to 10. I think Argentina is not joining, but that's another story. But I think this story here is just another shot in the foot by, you know, the American elite. And I'm not blaming the American public. You know, there's the old saying, I love my country, but I hate my government. So the story says the Biden administration will blacklist foreign financial institutions that support Russia's military-industrial complex as part of Washington's efforts to starve Moscow's war machine. An executive order to be issued on Friday. So I wonder if any of you have heard of this executive order on CNBC or Fox Business. Probably not. Will enable the U.S. to place sanctions on financial institutions, helping Russia secure the equipment and other goods it needs to keep fighting in Ukraine. Banks under sanctions would be denied access to the U.S. financial system, and that's the crux of the matter there. Is it any wonder that the BRICS and the Global South are trying to create their own financial system outside the dollar system? And I think that's going to accelerate it. And it talks here towards the end of the article that the Chinese are going to be targeted. And I don't think the Chinese are going to take that well. And it's going to continue to hurt the supply chain, I think, for the West. Because China is going to try to expand its markets elsewhere where they're welcome. So it says here, China has emerged as a particularly important source of finance for Russian businesses. Washington's threat to cut non-compliant lenders off from the U.S. market could have significant diplomatic ramifications with Beijing. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, ICBC, Bank of China, China Construction Bank, and Agricultural Bank of China have all begun significantly ratcheting up their activities in Russia. The decision to target banks is part of a broader push by the U.S. and other countries to find alternate funds for Ukraine, including possible move by the G7 to seize some of the frozen $300 billion of frozen Russian sovereign assets to Kiev. So that's another thing as well. They're looking to basically confiscate those $300 billion. And as I said, that's just going to accelerate the move away from the dollar, in my opinion. And I mean, you might not agree with me, but I think a lot of people will, that all the sanctions, all the stuff they've thrown at Russia has actually not hurt Russia. The Russian economy is doing really well. And I would say the war in the Ukraine is a lost cause. I saw the other day that the Washington Post, their website, they had a bar at the top of their website, War in Ukraine. Apparently they've removed that. Why did they remove that? Well, probably because that war is basically over. And here we have, why do you need to do that? You know, the war is almost over. But as I said, it's just going to shoot the dollar in the foot even more. So I don't think it's going to get better, unfortunately, in terms of demand for dollars. It's going to decrease from foreigners. And when there's less demand for currency, it becomes worth less. And a currency that becomes worth less buys less. And that's what inflation is. It's as simple as that. And before we look at gold, though, I just want to, for my UK viewers, you know, I've been talking about that the economy in the UK is not doing well, but also in the US, but we got confirmation. I think, yeah, yesterday, UK economy shrinks in third quarter as recession fears mount. And I would say the numbers are probably even worse. And the other thing I would say that recession, GDP, all the talk about growth or recession, it is all a Keynesian fixation, because in a free market world where government is small, where Keynesians don't exist, who cares about GDP? The only reason they care about GDP, or whether it's growing or in a recession or not growing, is that they have to make sure that their train just went by. And I'll tell you a little bit about the trains in a second. But yeah, they have to make sure that the fiat currency system keeps going. And because government is so important in the Keynesian system that if the economy doesn't grow, they can't keep growing. So that's why I say it's a Keynesian fixation. So back to the train. Yeah, so we flew into Geneva on the 21st, and it's very convenient. You could rent a car, but it's easier just to go on. There's a train station at Geneva Airport, and we take the train all the way up to here. It stops down the road here, and we walk with our suitcases to where we're staying. We have to change in Montreux. There's only one change of train, but it's just walk over to the other side of the platform, so it's very convenient. Anyway, back to gold. So I wanted to show you this chart. It's a weekly chart of gold going all the way back to, let's see here, 2000. Yeah, September 2000. Actually, September 11th, 9/11, 2000. And it's a weekly chart. It's a line chart. It's not a bar chart, because it looks very messy, like a bar chart on a weekly chart that is so long. So I've done it as a line. But the other lines here, the red line, the black line, and the green line, they are moving averages. And why are they important? Well, let's go through it. As you can see, the green line, let's start. The green line is the 200-week moving average. The black line is the 100-week moving average, and the red line is the 50-week moving average. And as you can see, when the gold bull market started in 2001, there's a bottom around $252. That 50-week moving average stayed above the 100-week and the 200-week all the way up until around 2013, after the market had topped in 2011. Yes, along the way there were ups and downs, but as you can see by this chart, in hindsight, it was, a clear bull market. But from 2013 up until, let's see here, it tried to, the 50-week tried to go back around 2017, but it only really went back above the 100-week and the 200-week in around September of 2019, right when that repo crisis started. And it stayed like the moving average was back from 2001 to 2011 up until, let's see here, 2021. And since 2021, that 50-week moving average has been struggling to get back above the 100-week. But as you can see now, we've clearly gone back above the 100-week. We're comfortably above the 200-week, and also the 100-week is above the 200-week moving average. So what I'm trying to say here, I think we're just in the beginning of a major leg up in gold. We're probably back in 2001, 2002 in terms of where we are right now. And where do I think gold is going to go in terms of dollars? I don't know, but all this is telling me is that the powers that be, the central banks, they can't stop inflating. They have to create more debt to keep the system going. And hopefully by now you understand why that is so, because anytime they issue new debt, there's not enough debt out there to pay off the interest on that debt, so they have to keep issuing more and more debt. And the worst thing that can happen to this Keynesian fiat currency system, of course, is that the debt is paid off and that the debt collapses, and that's why they hate recessions, right? So that's how I see gold here. Of course, just like from 2001 to 2011, it's not going to go in a straight line. There are going to be periods like in 2008 when gold dropped from just over 1,000 to just below 700. There are going to be ups and downs, but what I'm trying to say here, for the long haul, it still looks really good. And that's why unless I have an asset that looks really good and cheap relative to gold, I will keep stacking and adding on to my stack. And also silver, of course. Silver is when silver catches fire, so to speak, it's gonna be like gold on steroids. I think that's what Jim Sinclair, God rest his soul, used to say, right? So yeah, that's how I see things. With that, I'm going to wish you all a great weekend, a great Christmas, a great holiday, and I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.